episode where we are speaking to Fiji Law Society President, lawyer Wylie Clarke, and the Commission of Inquiry report into the appointment of former FICAC Commissioner Barbara Malimali, the ruling delivered by High Court Judge Justice Dane Tuingeregere after applicants like Wylie Clarke as the president of the Law Society and others took the matter to court in relation to the contents of the report. Justice Tuingeregere, the wider ruling, stated that COI's work after 31st January 2025 was ultra-virus, which was unlawful because the president had no power to extend the commission's life, meaning the entire report is null and void. And also it was highlighted the court separately found apparent bias by the Commissioner of COI, and that's Justice David Ashton Lewis, and a breach of natural justice by the President and Prime Minister in releasing the report without warning those named, of course, and we'll talk about natural justice in this case. The court also quashed the adverse findings in the report against Wylie Clarke, Laurel Vorasi, Barbara Malimali, and Graham Leung, and declared that the report in its entirety is null and void. A lot of legal terms there, but Wylie, to start off with, where were you when the Commission of Inquiry report first came out public? I remember it, all of a sudden it dropped on social media.
Yeah, look, I think we all saw the announcement of the report being delivered to the president. But then, of course, it just sort of went dark from there because we didn't really know what was in that report. I think, if memory serves me correctly, I would have become actually aware that I had been named, and it was through social media, in about late June, early July of 2025, last year. And the whole sort of world stopped when that happened.
In your own words, what did it actually say about you?
Oh, it criticized me in very strong terms, making findings that I'd perverted the course of justice. I had colluded or conspired with others to stop the FICAC investigation into Ms. Malimali, but also through all of that, bizarrely, that somehow I had been involved in her appointment as FICAC Commissioner. And then, of course, as well as that, there was these allegations against me and Ms. Varasi for that 5th September meeting about us bullying and intimidating the FICAC staff, which was all pretty extraordinary, and the suggestion that I'd committed or possibly committed criminal offenses. I mean, those are very, very, very serious allegations, and you're just shocked when you see stuff like that being said about you.
You've been the Law Society president for a number of years. You've had a lot of battles in relation to different situations. To have this done to you, your reputation, all of a sudden overnight, this report drops and it's got all these allegations. What happens?
Well, I mean, it was really different in that all of the other battles that I've sort of had to fight with the Fiji Law Society on stuff has always been about issues, where government does something or something is said, and we either issue a statement or we engage with the relevant government minister or department to sort of argue the issue, a rule of law issue. But this is the first time, certainly in my experience, and I've been president for 5 years. This was the first time that I actually came under personal attack like this, and to have it done in a formal COI report is hugely damaging and quite devastating.
Just for the people who are listening or watching this afternoon, the comment in relation that you played a part in the appointment of the FICAC Commissioner.
Yeah.
You have no part in appointing a FICAC Commissioner.
Yeah, I had none whatsoever.
You are not part of the Judicial Services Commission?
No, I'm not.
So where did this come from?
To be honest, I do not know, because I made very clear in my affidavit and then during my evidence that I had no part to play at all in Ms. Malimali's appointment, and only came to actually know about it when it was announced. Because up until that point, I simply didn't know. And to suggest, without any evidence at all, that I had played a part, well, I mean, I was dumbfounded.
Let's go to the 5th September 2024 meeting at FICAC. Sure. And I remember I rushed over to check what was happening at FICAC when we saw you leaving eventually in a vehicle. I think it was around mid-morning. The Commission of Inquiry said you and others went to FICAC on that day to bully and intimidate officers into releasing Barbara Malimali.
Yeah.
What actually happened that morning?
Look, I mean, Ms. Malimali called me that morning that she had been arrested. And arrested by her staff. I had spoken to her probably for the first time in years, about 15 or 20 minutes before that, just to sort of wish her good luck, because I'd seen the paper that morning, her first day at work, and of course, like a lot of people, was aware that it was going to be tough because there was word of an investigation, that there'd been search warrants executed at the Electoral Commission. It didn't take a genius to work out that Ms. Malimali was going to have a hard start to her role, and it was really in that spirit I just called just to wish her good luck, and then we spoke maybe for 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, and then we were done. And it was that later call when she said that she had been arrested by her staff, and she asked me whether I could contact the Attorney General and the Chief Registrar to at least inform them of what had happened, and that this matter needed to be resolved. And she asked as well that it might be good if I come along as well, just to help try and diffuse the situation. And I agreed to do that because, well, Ms. Malimali was the actual commissioner. She'd been properly appointed. The JSC had followed the process. And there was no question at all that she was the lawful commissioner of FICAC. The concern for me was that Ms. Pulewai, who was then the acting deputy commissioner and under whose instructions she had been arrested and about to be charged, the concern was that she was clearly unhappy about Ms. Malimali's appointment. She'd also been an unsuccessful applicant for the job, and it was quite clear that it was absolutely unacceptable for somebody with a vested interest in the process that FICAC was undertaking to carry through with it, because the only person that was going to benefit from having Ms. Malimali arrested and charged was Ms. Pulewai. So, I mean, and that, to us, that was of huge concern, because here was the power of a very important institution of FICAC being used to advance, an unsuccessful applicant's interests. And it was on that basis that that I agreed to go. And it was also on that basis that I called Ms. Varasi as a former president to join me, because I wanted her to come both as sort of as support, but also just to show to the FICAC team, look, that we had very legitimate and serious concerns about what was going on. And that's why we went, and the thrust of our submission and argument with FICAC on that day was, look, if there is an investigation to be had into Ms. Malimali, fine. That needs to be properly investigated. But it cannot be you. It cannot be you.
There's a conflict of interest.
There's a huge conflict of interest. Our advice was, put the file together, close it, and give it to the police. Because at least the police, there would be confidence, public confidence, that the investigation would be independently and impartially carried out. Whereas the way that it was going, there was no way, in our view, it could possibly be perceived as impartial and objective.
What was the reaction?
Ms. Pulewai was very firm in her resistance. Mr. Saomi was also very firm in their resistance. And, of course, with me was the chief registrar and two other lawyers, Mr. Amani Mbale and Mr. Nemani Tuifangalele. Because, of course, we were all, speaking at various points. But the chief registrar basically was there as the secretary of the JSC. He was basically just like, what on earth are you people doing? What is, Ms. Malimali's been properly appointed. This is complete, insubordination, I think, was used. There was a lot of just confusion and anxiety about what FICAC was doing. But they were very, very resistant. The only, and this meeting went on, and it just kept going as we sort of went back and forth. But the message continued to be
you
very
guys
clear.
Wanting this matter to be referred to police, and they maintaining
no, this needs to stay here. They use the argument as well. I think Mr. Saomi made that point, was that it can't be given to the police because it's it's an election offence, and hence it can only stay with FICAC. But of course, that's not an answer to the concern. The concern is that they should not be handling this investigation at all.
Especially if a person who's ordered the arrest of Malimali will benefit from that.
Benefit from it, yeah.
Who could be appointed as FICAC Commissioner, which she had applied for.
Yep. And it was that simple, Vijay. And to be honest, all of this sort of controversy that erupted after that was frankly astounding, because I just can't understand why the commissioner didn't see that, and why counsel assisting didn't see that, and why there was all these critics out there that just couldn't see these basic facts as important. The only person on that FICAC team that actually made any sense, and she was the last to speak, unfortunately. If she'd spoken earlier, we could have saved ourselves a lot of time, was Ms. Bokini Ratu. She was the only one that, when she spoke up, made it clear that FICAC was, in fact, aware that there was a potential problem here, and they were concerned about potential conflicts and the perception that there is that they wouldn't be able to do it impartially, and they were thinking about giving it to the police. And when she said that, I thought, thank goodness, at least somebody here is understanding, because up until that point, it was just a very firm no. We are going to proceed with this.
Now, Wylie, the High Court found there was no probative evidence that you had any role in Barbara Malimali's appointment at all, and called the finding against you irrational. When you heard that line in court, what was your reaction?
Hallelujah, Vijay. It felt like vindication for what we'd been saying all along, which was that the findings that the COI made against me and Ms. Varasi about that 5th September meeting just never made any sense to us. Never made any sense, because that just wasn't why we were there, to bully anybody. And we were never there as part of some role that we were playing in her appointment. It's just none of that was true, And of course, there was never any evidence about it. So it felt like vindication, Vijay. And relief, and a huge amount of relief that finally the court, that it wasn't just me or Ms. Varasi or others saying this. This was actually, the decision of a court having considered all of the evidence.
Wylie, I know you haven't given any interview of this sort.
Yeah, ever.
And in relation to this, and because it's always been allegations against you, and you've kept silent. Now, can you take us to the first meeting you had with the Commissioner, Justice David Ashton Lewis, after he was appointed?
Yeah.
What was the conversation about?
Well, like other witnesses that were to be called to the Commission of Inquiry, we were all sent a letter, a meet and greet letter. And I understood the meeting to be about just sitting down, understanding from the Commission how the COI was going to work and what was expected of me as a witness and so on. But that's not actually how that meeting turned out.
What happened?
Ashton Lewis seemed more interested in knowing what the Law Society's attitude would be to an expat Chief Justice. And I refused to engage with him on that because I thought it was inappropriate. And that went back and forth for quite a bit of time until I think he just got frustrated with my attempts to sort of avoid talking about it and basically just blurted out, well, I think I should be Chief Justice. And you could.
This is the Commissioner of the Commission of Inquiry.
Yeah.
Was there an initial discussion or agenda that what was the meeting about, or it just came out of the blue?
I thought there was an agenda about how the COI was going to work and when I was likely to be called, what they needed from me. I expected it was going to be a sort of administrative meeting, right? The Law Society's view on who should be the next Chief Justice was certainly not on the agenda, but I could tell that's all he seemed interested in talking about.
What was your reaction straight after that?
Well, I was shocked that he would actually say something like that. And I could see Ms. Mason, who was sitting opposite me, was shocked by what he just said. And the secretary for the COI, I can't remember her name, from the PM's office also appeared shocked. And so there was a sort of silence as I tried to digest what he just said to me. And when I eventually responded, I basically just said to him, look, this is a really inappropriate conversation for us to be having because our view on who should be Chief Justice and any discussion about who should be Chief Justice, let alone him wanting to be Chief Justice, was entirely inappropriate, particularly because the COI and its terms of reference were going to have to deal specifically with the JSC. And of course, the Chief Justice is the chair of the JSC. Just alarm bells were just going off in my head about what had just happened, because then of course I became very concerned about where the COI was going to be going.
Let's talk about the COI a bit before we go to the break. It was first said that you never told during the hearings what were the allegations against you, and that any of this was even being considered against you. And it's been even said the commissioner apparently told you at the time he believed you an honest witness.
Yeah.
What was it sitting like that when the report came out, this whole contradiction, all of a sudden, all these allegations against him?
I couldn't believe it. I never thought for a moment that anything remotely like what came out of that report was even possible. Particularly when, like you say, he'd assured me when I was responding to questions by Ms. Mason about the 5th September meeting, that he thought I was an honest witness. And it was never put to me at any of that time that I'd bullied or that I was part of a conspiracy, that I was involved in her appointment. None of that was ever put to me, So when that finding came out, I just sort of thought, what the hell is this? It really just was, it was just completely out of left field. And of course, and that was just made worse by just how serious the allegations and findings were, because they were so damaging to me. I just thought, come on, how can you do this? How can you do this to me? How can you do this to anybody? Just, come up with stuff like this without having at least given me a chance to respond to it, Never got that opportunity.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
Bulla Fiji villagers, we've had a bit of a glow up and we know some of you are probably wondering, hey wait, where did the videos go? Don't worry, we didn't hide them. The video section has a brand new name and it's now called Watch. That means all your favorite videos and shows are now in one place and easier to find. Want your Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan? It's there. Looking for Trending Amotengu? It's there too. Latest videos? Yep, all there. Don't miss the Watch section on Fiji Village, your trusted news provider for the latest videos, stories, and shows all in one place. Go and have a look and tell us what you're watching first.
Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight is Wylie Clarke, the president of the Fiji Law Society. Now, Wylie Clarke is a well-known name. Everybody knows when it comes to law and bills, and Law Society always makes statements for, against what matters in terms of rule of law. Let's talk about natural justice. For someone who's listening at home, currently traveling on the road, who isn't a lawyer, what does natural justice actually mean? And what should have happened to you in your case and it didn't?
Well, thanks, Vijay. I mean, look, natural justice, if you kind of just put aside that term, and it's also known as procedural fairness, if you put aside those sort of legal jargon, the basic principle of natural justice is about fairness. It's about fairness to anybody against whom there might be adverse findings or conclusions made. That principle requires a decision maker or any public official to give you an opportunity both to understand what the allegation is, but also to give you an opportunity to respond to it, and give your side of the story, so that that is taken into consideration when a decision is being made. It's a fundamental principle in our justice system. In fact, it's a fundamental principle in all the justice systems I'm aware of. And it just comes down to that fairness, because no one ever wants to be in a position where, out of the blue and without you even being made aware of it, these findings or decisions are being made against you, and you've never had an opportunity to know about them beforehand and get an opportunity to respond.
What was it like for your family when the report hit? Your name is all over the place, all around the country and over the internet, on social media.
Yeah.
What was it like?
That was probably the most upsetting thing for me. And it wasn't just with the release of the report. I mean, as you may recall, there was also this period even leading up to it, right, where people seemed to be having access to copies or whatever, or drafts of it. I mean, I don't know what they had. But there were already those allegations sort of floating around, right? But no one could tell whether they were true or not. And I had made a decision not to read any of that stuff anymore, just keep myself away from social media. But my children weren't. My wife continued to sort of check on that stuff, and they were doing it because they were worried about me. And that was, I think, the biggest thing for me, is because they, in being really worried about what was going to happen to me, that impacted me on, many levels, because as a husband and father, it's supposed to be the other way around. You're the father, and the parents are supposed to be worried about the children, looking after them. And it felt like the opposite, and it just, that was the bit that really, I think, impacted me the most, was the effect it was having on them. Because I'm in this public role, and I mean, leaving aside just how very personal the allegations against me were, I signed up for the job. They didn't, but they have to put up with the same kind of scrutiny as well. I mean, Ms. Varasi was very upset as well at the time, because kids at school were walking up to her kids, and talking about these allegations, and that had a deep impact on her as a mother. And I could see exactly why, because I was going through the same thing with my children and my wife. And then, of course, when the report was released, and of course it was, it had gone out to a much broader audience, overseas and whatnot. Suddenly my extended family is aware that, that I might be in trouble here, over this stuff. Of course, criminal charges, all this sort of stuff is, because I'm having to field calls from family about this stuff, It was tough. It was really, really tough, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
Wylie, was there moments at work, even out in the public, you with your children, where you're feeling that you are being branded as you're walking along, or maybe a level of shame based on the allegations that were out there?
Yeah. It wasn't so much about the fact that I thought I'd done anything wrong. I knew what we did that day on 5th September was the right thing to do. It was our duty to do it, and we did it. But of course, when you're faced with really serious findings like that, and people are reading this stuff, and of course people are inclined to believe this stuff because it's in a report, it's an official state report.
A lot of gossip in it.
Yeah, you're telling me. But people don't necessarily look at it like that. It's got an official seal on it. It's got an official signature. So, it must be right. And so of course I had many situations where just meeting, walking at the Motor City, I remember one time, with my kids, and people are looking at me, and I couldn't be sure whether they were looking at me and thinking, hey, there's that, guy that committed those crimes and all of that stuff. I don't know what they were thinking, but you have that doubt in your mind about, what's going on and how people perceived me at the time, and you doubt yourself, when you're sort of interacting with others, because you're trying to sort of get a read of what they actually think about you, or think of you. With my friends, with my family, no, it was different. They were all 100% behind me. But it was just dealing with people who don't know me, and what they thought. And we all, I think we're tough, and we try and sort of be stoic about it, and just kind of just glide over it. But it's not really possible when you get the sense that everybody, is thinking you've done something really wrong, and you're right there. And it became a safety issue as well with some of the stuff that was being published. That I'm not only just worried about what people think. I was also worried about what people might do. That might harm me or my family. And that just completely freaked me out. So at the time, particularly when the social media was so sort of hot about this stuff.
And some people had shared your presidential address publicly.
Yeah. I became really worried when I saw that my affidavit to the COI, which is supposed to be confidential, I thought, we were all assured that everything was confidential. I saw it splashed, in some blog or post somewhere, and there it was. And the first thing I sort of focused on was my address. I just thought, oh my God. People are going to see this. And that made me worry about our security, my family's security. Because, you may recall this at the time. There was a lot of really toxic, strong social media commentary about this stuff, about me and about the others. And I just thought, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to protect my family when my address is out there? And that caused many sleepless nights, I can tell you.
I just wanted to ask you about that, the physical and mental toll. Trying to function every day and not knowing what will happen next.
It plays on your mind all the time. You can't stop thinking about it. You try and focus. Work becomes a welcome distraction. Doing other stuff becomes a welcome distraction. But I don't know what it is. Human nature being human nature, your mind always brings you back to things that are going to worry, that worry you. And of course, this was a big worry for me. Lots of sleepless nights, lots of just anxiety, and you try and function like a normal human being, but your inside things are sort of going, they're quite.
What's next?
Huh?
Like what's next?
Yeah, what's next? And just trying to sort of not just process it all, but also just trying to manage it all. Because so many things are happening, and you've got to be doing so many different things. You're trying to function to the best of your ability. But, lack of rest, when that's sustained over a very, number of weeks, if not months, it really starts to sort of eat away at you.
Well, the other thing is, how do you explain this to people, even those close to you, if they are not aware of judgments or how the law works? How do you explain to people that what you've been accused of in terms of criminal conspiracy without any substantial evidence, which has now come out in the High Court judgment? How do you explain it to even those who may be close to you but don't read judgments or don't know the law?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I don't know how many times I said this, when I had to sort of bring it up was, well, it's not true, first of all. It's not true. And I would then explain, because it all went back to this thing about 5th September, right? Everything went back to that, and my role in that. And I would just explain to them what happened, what I did, and why I did it, just like I explained to you earlier. And then, and I just had to explain it for what it was, and that worked. But, when you have to do that over and over and over again, and it's not because people are sort of inquisitive. There were more about expressions of concern, and worry by family and friends, and, and of course the natural question, what's this about? Why are they saying these things about you? It was really hard, Vijay.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break. Every day, thousands of Fijians turn to one place to know what is happening, for the stories that matter, for the moments that bring us together, for the news you trust. Recognized by BBC Media Action Research as one of Fiji's most trusted news sources, that place is Fiji Village. And because Fiji keeps moving, so do we. We've listened to how you read, watch and listen, what you love, what you want more of, and what could simply be easier. And now the wait is over. The new Fiji Village website is now live. Built with you in mind, made smarter, made faster, made for the way you connect with us every day. No more searching for your favorite videos. Watch Now brings everything together in one place, ready when you are. Missed your favorite radio show? Had to listen. Your home for live radio, podcasts and audio content whenever it suits you. Sports fans can now get live scores faster with our new scoreboard feature. Need a story explained? Ask AI is there to help as well. And reading late into the night? Switch on dark mode and scroll in comfort. The same trusted news now with a smarter, easier experience built for you. Fiji Village, your trusted news provider. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight is President of the Fiji Law Society, Wylie Clarke. Now, Wylie, the High Court has quashed the findings against you and declared the entire Commission of Inquiry report null and void. From your perspective, does that undo the harm?
No. The harm's been done, There has been vindication, but, that doesn't really make up for the ordeal that I think I've been through, my family's been through, Laurel Larasi and her family's been through. Same with Graham Leung, and of course Barbara Malimali. I mean, it's the vindication is a huge relief, I must say, that we can at least draw a line under it. But
it only goes so far.
But it only goes so far, because a lot of damage had been done in the process, And I mean, who's going to read the decision? Has everybody that formed a particular view?
This decision.
Yeah.
154 pages.
154 pages. I mean, honestly, who's going to read that? It's it's a very thorough decision, but you know, it's, you know, it was funny after the judge stood up and, you know, left after he'd announced and read out his reasons. You could just sort of feel the weight, you know, just kind of come off your shoulders. It's this huge sense of relief, you know, and I hugged Laurel, you know, and just whoever else was close by, because this, you know, there were so many people who had been on that journey with us, you know, with it, and the sense that we could just, it was done. It was done. But the journey to get to that point was like really, really difficult. I mean, there's nothing really that can undo that, you know. It's difficult. But of course, to be vindicated is, yeah, it's. I mean, I can't describe it in, you know, in words. Just how, just that strong sense of relief that just came over me when it was finally done.
How did your family feel after the ruling?
Just ecstatic that finally justice had been done, you know, and that I think they were just relieved that this was no longer, you know, this monkey on my back was, you know, finally gone. There was a few tears there, so, you know.
Yeah. Well, you've gone through tough times together.
We have. And so just, you know, being together, looking out for one another, and just
maybe one of the lowest times for the family.
Oh, certainly, for sure. I mean, like I say, I just have never been through anything like this. I mean, it's you know, I mean, families go through different things. There's deaths in the families, and, you know, there's all different kinds of grief that we have to deal with. But this was sustained, you know, for 18 months. This thing, you know, this shadow over you, this shadow sort of lurking over you. Yeah, there's been nothing like it, and just exhausting, really exhausting.
The High Court has left damages and costs to be dealt with separately. Are you planning to take this matter further?
Yeah, we are. And it's really about, I think just showing that government and these commissions need to be very careful with how they treat people and people's lives and reputations, because there has to be consequences for doing this kind of damage. You know, the people who've done this damage, this commission that's done this damage, and the government that was responsible for this commission, there has to be some responsibility for it. There has to be some accountability for doing what they did. You know, they can't just trash people's lives, trash people's reputations, and not expect to be accountable for it. And that's really what this next stage is about for me.
What do you have to say to people who only read the COI, the Commission of Inquiry report so far? What's your suggestion to them? And it may be embedded in their heads that everything that's in that report is true.
Well, I mean, like you say, it's 153 pages long. I mean, obviously, my first answer would be to read the judgment. But obviously, if that's not possible, and I completely understand why that would not be possible or realistic, read the conclusions. Read the conclusions of the decision, which are at the end. And I think just that will give, people an understanding that the whole process was unfair from the beginning, that there was quite clear apparent bias throughout the COI report, the COI process, that there was just simply no evidence. There's none. That supported any of these really quite outrageous findings and recommendations that were made by that COI. I mean, I saw something in the media today that there are still some people out there concerned that there are still issues regarding, improper influence and whatnot. My only answer to that would be, well, look, this COI went for over 30 days. It heard all the evidence that could possibly be heard over this. The court's been through that evidence, with a much stricter lens, because of course the standard that was applied in the COI is much looser than a standard that a court must apply, to make sure that there is justice. And surely during that 30 days, and surely during these 30 plus witnesses that were called to give evidence, if there was any evidence at all of that fueled these suspicions, it would have come out somewhere during the course of the COI. But as the courts found, there's none. There's none.
And the police have found the same.
And the police have found the same.
And the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions.
Exactly.
But millions of dollars of taxpayers' money has been spent on it.
Yeah, I know. It's, that's...
And a whole lot of time has been
a huge amount of
spent
time.
on it.
Look, and that's why, I think if there's any lesson to be learned from the COI is, I think government's going to be very careful and considered before it even thinks about embarking on a COI. Going to be very careful in how its terms of reference are crafted. Probably more importantly, and we've seen that through the COI, is they've got to pick the right people to do it.
It's my next question. What needs to change, in your view, so that no one else, people like you, no one else in Fiji, people like you and your co-applicants, what you went through doesn't happen again?
I think government has to be very cautious in taking a drastic step like commissioning an inquiry into any matter. It's not for no reason that the Act says that it's about matters of public importance, right? So, it's got to be clear in the government's mind that that condition is satisfied. But if it embarks on it, it's just got to get those basic things right. Stick to your terms of reference. Don't stray outside like this COI did. Give every witness or person, that may get allegations made against them, be fair. Give them every opportunity to have those allegations put to them, and any evidence that they're going to seek to rely on to make those allegations, put it to the witness, and do not use, like this COI report did, this really quite extraordinary, intemperate language, which I think the court commented on a number of times, because that was the other thing that really stood out with the COI report, was that the language that was being used in there was just unjudicial, intemperate, pejorative. A COI is a very serious thing, and it ought to be done properly by making sure that all those safeguards that I just talked about are respected and upheld. Because otherwise it just becomes something like what's just happened here, where all this taxpayers' money has been spent. I mean, and I know estimates vary, but it was a lot of money. And it's been wasted. You know, you have to ask, for what? You know, for what? Other than just chewing up all of our oxygen, you know, and distracting us from important work and things that ought to be done but aren't being done because of the distraction.
I'll go back to natural justice because it was clearly stated for the President and Prime Minister. And there's some comments whether the police, FICAC and others, you know, ensured that there is natural justice. But in the hands of the President and the Prime Minister, why was it important for them to ensure that people like you are afforded natural justice?
Because they were the decision makers at the end of the day. The President commissioned the report on the Prime Minister's recommendation. And the Prime Minister received that report, and of course so did the President. And it was they who decided what was going to happen next, right? I really don't think it's an answer to say, well, it's going to be the police that are going to afford that natural justice. That's a completely separate thing. You can't contract that out to somebody else. The decision is yours. You know, you're the decision maker there. That's the Prime Minister and the President acts on the Prime Minister's recommendations, of course. But it was their responsibility, not the police, and not FICAC, to do that for them. You know, because of course, by the time it gets to the police, it's a police investigation. You know, it's a criminal investigation. How is that fair? You know, it's not.
Wylie, for those who are those from government who are watching this tonight or listening to this tonight through our podcast, what is the one thing you want to tell them about what you and your family went through?
If you are going to basically throw a person's life into turmoil, don't just think of the person, think of the family that stands with that person and is with that person. And that, because they wield enormous amounts of power. And they really can impact somebody's life and liberty. So my request would be, look, they've got to think very carefully before they take steps like that. And if they are going to take steps like that, they must adhere to all of the principles that I outlined earlier. You know, it's got to be fair, it's got to be proportionate. They've got to do things by the book, because they have to be accountable as well for what they are doing if they're trying to hold somebody else accountable. Does that make sense?
Yep.
They have to be accountable too for their actions, right? And that means exercising that power sparingly, very, very carefully, and responsibly.
Now,
and please do not put people through this if there is no basis at all for this.
what's the one thing you want the public to take from your story? Not the legal ruling, from your story.
Don't believe everything you're told on social media. Take the time to try and understand what's actually going on. And spare a thought for those actually trying to do the right thing. There are a lot of good people out there, and one shouldn't automatically assume that everybody is bad. I mean, I think that's just a really sad way to look at life and others. I much prefer to see the positive in everybody, and it's only through actually being sort of disappointed or having things done to you, then you can form a decision that perhaps, well, maybe this is not a person you want to be associated with. But don't automatically assume that what's being said about somebody that's bad is true, because it's there's a lot of good people out there trying to do good things, and sometimes they get attacked for trying to do the right thing, and that's not fair.
Wylie, I know it's been difficult for you to front up to the camera and speak for the first time in detail regarding your ordeal and what you've gone through. And after the High Court ruling, that you shared this space with me and the people who are listening to this and watching this out there. We greatly appreciate you sharing your experiences, and we know this journey continues. So we look forward to having you on the show again, and
let's talk about a happier subject. Hopefully,
maybe talk about a happier subject, and that's our show for tonight. Until next week, have a great evening.
Thank you, Vijay.